And we're back here on New Twist Radio, New Twist TV on YouTube. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and all that good stuff at New Twist Radio. And right now, I have the pleasure of speaking to Everett Salyer, co-creator of Root Sky Productions. How you doing, Everett?
I'm good, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for being with us. Root Sky Productions. Well, first of all, you have a film that you're in production of, Joshua 19, that we're going to talk about in just a couple minutes. But give me a little background on yourself. Root Sky Productions. What is that all about?
We are a video multimedia production company that focuses only on projects that are positive, inspiring, uplifting, and have some kind of social value. We feel there's an imbalance in media. You know, we focus a lot on all the negative things, and I'm not putting that down whatsoever. There's obviously a need for that type of escapism, but we're really focused on creating the other side, showing people the other side of life too. I mean, life is filled with a lot of beautiful moments, and we seem to gloss over it all the time.
Definitely right. And that's like a breath of fresh air right there, knowing that, you know, your company is out there focusing on a positive where there's so much negative going on in the world right now. So many negative things that just affect the whole world and the psyche of people, and people don't even realize how much it can affect them on a personal note. And some of the projects that you are putting out there and planning on putting out there are going to be of the positive note. So I would encourage a lot of people to definitely check out Root Sky Productions and their works, so you can see things from another perspective, namely a positive perspective. Now, a background on yourself before we talk about Joshua 19. Is your background in film production, or tell us a little bit about yourself?
I actually started my career as an audio engineer in television news. Eventually went to sports news, basically news and entertainment. Worked for companies like Big Ten Network and ESPN, and then most recently Turner Studios. In life, I guess, as I always kind of moved on and I've always done better for myself. You know, whatever that whole argument is of like what's a better life, but every job I've made more money, had more responsibilities. I found myself just not living the type of life I wanted to live. It's hard to explain really, but I knew that I wasn't serving my purpose. I knew that I had a purpose other than what I was doing. Working 20 years in this industry, you kind of pick up all facets of production. So I eventually got my own equipment, and I've done this in other forms. I've done a comedy. You know, I had a company called Stop Looking at Media, co-created with 5 other people, and we focused on comedy. So it's nothing new to me. I've had that kind of background for a while, but this is more, I guess, a personal growth evolution for me. Like, that's happened. I'm 40 now. I started in television when I was 20. For me, this is just a natural progression to everything that I've seen and I've been through in this industry in particular.
Now that's awesome. Now you say this is a natural progression for you, going from news and then to sports and producing comedy content to now positive content. Do you see this as another step in your growth process, the positive content, or is producing positive content something that you will be looking to do from here on out? Do you want to expand into, I guess, I don't know if I should say more traditional content as far as being, some negative content. I don't want to say that, but there's your content focuses on the positive. We all know there's negative out there. Do you want to also do some of the more traditional aspects of production with your production?
I'm not really opposed to that, but at the same time, that's not in my wheelhouse. It's not what I'm really thinking about on a daily basis. this to me is more like I've felt like since I've been focused on this, and I told you I left the job. It was a 6-figure salary. It was a great atmosphere. The people were great. I mean, I just needed to focus on something that I felt was more purposeful in my life, and this is it. And I, even though, you know, this isn't a cash cow by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, but I do feel like there's a purpose here. I do feel that I'm doing something, working in projects that are going to pull people closer together. You know, and I know I don't do that alone. It's just like a ripple in a pond, right? If we all do that, I think it was Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, you just do your little bit of good in the world, and if everybody does their little bit of good, it all adds up to a whole lot of good.
I like that. Joshua 1:9. Okay, tell us a little bit about that film.
So Joshua 1:9 is kind of it's a raw and honest look at one man's journey into sobriety. Joshua Neal is a guru fitness instructor in the city of Atlanta with a huge personal following. People love him to death. When you meet him, he's the kind of person that when you meet him, it's almost like you have to ask yourself, what am I doing with my life? He's a spectacular guy. He collects food and clothing for the homeless and distributes it himself. He puts on a special needs dance class for kids in the autism spectrum and kids with Down syndrome. He does yoga classes just for people who have suffered through addiction. He's just one of those guys that, you name it, and he doesn't brag about it. He is a reluctant, what I call a reluctant hero, but he's also facing addiction, and he has gone through a very tumultuous life. His father was murdered before he was even born. His mother suffered mental illness, as did his grandmother. He lived with both of them. Sometimes they were almost homeless, you would say, in certain aspects. They would just move from house to house. His mother had to work 2 or 3 jobs just to get enough food to support them, and he was molested when he was a young child by a family member, and and also physically abused, and it's a hard story to tell, but it's one that he wants to tell. He wants to tell it because he knows if other people can relate to it and go on this journey with him, maybe they can find it in themselves to overcome, or at least attempt to overcome, to try. I mean, the thing is about addiction is you have setbacks. You fall sometimes. You have, you know, we were filming in Texas, and he had a relapse. It's part of the process, and I don't think like people really understand that, and I think that people also have this idea that addicts are, you know, just bottom feeders and these kinds of people who don't deserve our second thought, you know. But the truth is we all suffer some form of addiction. Some of us have addictions to like really powerful narcotics, and he happens to be one of those people. So, he's such an amazing, positive person, and you know, part of the documentary is telling that story, but also part of it is kind of shattering that myth of hey, these are kind of the people with addictions, and maybe we should be looking at it more as just a health issue instead of a criminal issue, and maybe we should look within ourselves and think about what we're doing to people who suffer these really harsh addictions that are harming themselves.
Now, you make a lot of awesome points in there, and you talk about Joshua being, you know, he basically not your stereotypical addict. When you think of an addict, you think of somebody that is you think of a junkie in the sense, a person that is out begging and trying to ask you for money and trying to do whatever they can to find the money to get their next high. It doesn't sound like Josh is this person. I mean, you say he's a personal trainer. He does a lot of good in his community, collects clothes for the homeless, food for the homeless, dance class for autistic children that you said, with special needs kids. And, you know, we don't see that face. We don't see that face in this country as the face of the addict. We always see something that is extremely negative as the face of the addict, and that I don't mean to make any type of light about it. I mean, both of these addicts need help, need professional help, and they just need to seek the help and get the help if they can. With this film, where you said he had a relapse while you were filming.
Yeah.
Are you does he allow you to, I don't know, is he seeking professional help, and are you privy to those sessions?
Yeah. So we're in actually one of his therapists. It's kind of an interesting story, and this is how we met. Okay, so it involves his therapist. It involves. I was actually working on a similar type documentary, and the subject at the time, once everything got real, I mean, he had to back out of the project, and I think what people don't understand, when you see someone doing a documentary like that, and you're giving them all access to the darkest parts of their life, that is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult. There are so few people in this world that can actually let that happen. So we were working on this documentary with another subject, and it became too difficult for him. And basically, we stopped the project. We shouldered it, so to speak. In that process, I had talked with Kelly Stokes, who is a transformational coach. So it's a different type. It's not per se a therapist, but what they do is they take a look at traumatic experiences that have happened in your life. And I hope I do this justice, because there's a lot here that even I'm still learning and trying to understand. But they take a look at the traumatic experiences, and the idea is that those traumatic experiences create a kind of blockage, if you will. And some of it might be like evolutionary, right? So, hey, if you touch the stove, you know that's hot. You don't have to touch the stove today to know it's hot, because you did it when you were a little kid, right? So,
I
so that
did,
blockage,
yes.
when those traumatic experience happens to you, your subconscious takes over and repeats these cycles that may not be really helping you or serving you, because you're not really dealing with the issue at hand. You're kind of suppressing it and pushing it down. But it taps into that. What she does is kind of taps into that, finds those things that aren't serving you, taps into that, and has you kind of re-experience them in a specific way. It is a really interesting process, and it's really been working well for him. And also, now I know he does from time to time see a more traditional type therapist, but we're not privy to that whatsoever. We do work with Kelly. Kelly gives us the kind of, we don't talk about his sessions. She talks with him, and I talk with him, and Kelly and I talk together, but she doesn't disclose anything that Josh and I, or Josh doesn't. Josh will tell her, like, what's it cool to talk to me about,
Right. Okay.
Which is almost everything. I mean, he's very open. He's very open and honest, and we've developed like a pretty strong friendship through this, because I see, I think what people also don't see with these documentaries with addicts is that you don't see people trying. I mean, it's hard. Think about the things that you like to do on a daily basis. Maybe it's eating a chocolate bar, and just focus on that for a second. Imagine giving that up for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I
It would
mean,
be hard,
addictions.
right? And that's
Yeah,
simple.
absolutely. The addictions are and right, like you said, it's not just drugs you can be addicted to. You can be addicted to candy. Most people in this country are addicted to sugar and don't even know it. Okay, you can be
Yeah,
addicted to working out. There's so many addictions you can have. And continue your point. I'm sorry.
yeah. But yeah, no, that's basically where I was getting at. Is imagine that, imagine doing that for the rest of your life, saying no, I'm not going to partake in this for the rest of your life. And now, somebody's waving candy bars in front of you all day,
Man.
or you're reliving certain situations where you would come home and just unwrap your candy bar and take yourself away for a few minutes. Like people, that's all socially acceptable. So people understand that more often, and they wouldn't want to throw you in a cell because you like to eat too many candy bars. But we do it some reason when people become addicted to narcotics, that they're using it in the same way to mask their pain almost always. And I'm not, look, I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't tell you these things without a doubt, but I will say that the people that I've met who have gone through this have lived some pretty tough lives, and most of them have been from adults, when they were kids.
Mm. Wow. Well, I mean, the addiction thing is crazy, and it's tough, and it's hard on families as well as the addict. It's just the hard thing. It's hard to see, like that. I want to ask you something. It's not personal, but it's alluding to your personality. And in full disclosure, Everett and I used to work together. What we say, about 12 years ago, we came to that conclusion. It was about 12. It's a while ago. And being that, from what I remember that you have compassion for people, and you generally care about people, and partly is you can see that in the productions that you make, all positive productions, with Root Sky Productions. How difficult is it for you to, and is it even possible to, as you're in a professional capacity of filming this production, how difficult is it to not become unprofessional, I guess I should say, and step out of your directorial status and not be a friend to Joshua? Does that question make sense? Like, it makes sense in my head, but I don't think it's coming out correct.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's debate in the documentary community on whether or not you should befriend your subjects. Listen, I when I meet people with amazing energy, I'm going to be drawn to them no matter what. So the thing is I think once you create that kind of relationship, especially when you're more open and honest and there's trust, like there's real trust between us, it becomes a more real story. And there are things. I mean, it's taken a while to develop the kind of, we've always felt like a connection in some weird way. I mean, I don't know, the three of us that kind of came together, Kelly, Josh, and I, we've always felt like this kind of almost otherworldly connection. So it's never been difficult in that way, but I think to honestly know that there's no judgment, that's not my place. And I don't do that to my friends who I'm not working on documentaries with, like I think when you come to people, when you say you love somebody and you bring somebody into your life, like you have a friend or you have a family member or whoever it is, when you say you love somebody, you can't attach strings to that. You can't say I love you only if you act this way. You have to love people no matter what, no matter how they act or what they do.
With this particular type of film that you call it's a documentary, but this documentary will be an ongoing story. But at some point, you're going to have to end it.
Yeah.
Where I don't want you to give us the ending of the story, but how do you decide as a director that okay, this is where we're going to end this story? Because it's still in production right now. We're going to talk about that and how people can see the trailer and even donate to the project. But how do you decide that this is going to be the end of the story? This is going to be the end of where we follow. Is there, do you wait for that one moment that says, all right, this is a great spot to end it, or do you already have a plan in mind of this is how we're going to end this story? Because the story goes on beyond the end, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, and that's hard to pinpoint exactly, but where I see it is sobriety for a year, and I just watched and. It's actually a really good series on Facebook with Jada Pinkett Smith called The Red Tabletop.
Yes.
Red Table Talk.
Yeah.
Have you watched it? Okay. So
I have not watched it yet.
Her mother said, "Yeah, no, it's really good. It's actually worth a watch." But her mother said it took her 6 years to get 1 year of sobriety. And I've kept that in kind of my head, and that's not a mark, but I see, I know where Joshua sees himself is being able to openly talk about this and not have it so deeply affect him. It's a hard progress, and I don't know if right now. I mean, there's obviously a documentary's got to end. I don't think it's going to be 6 months, but I think once we see a good bit of sobriety, and we can talk about that and say, hey, you've got a year sobriety under your belt. Where are you now, as opposed to where and look back at even some of the film we've done, and some of this. It's almost weird, Justin. It's sometimes when we're filming this, it's like filming a film, because as he's going, like he was really felt that he was in a good, strong space. And then as we started filming and we started diving deep into the topics, and he could talk about it without it really affecting him, but then, then watching it come back, like watching it, what he had just said or what he had just talked about, seeing himself talk about it would actually have an effect on him. So it's a really interesting process, and it's really, I think too, with his family, there's and if people watch the second trailer we've put out, you get a little more glimpse into his family. There's a lot of generational abuse that's happened in that family, even though like they're really great people, but there's just definitely generational abuse that's happened, and not just sexual abuse, but physical abuse, and at a certain point, it seems like maybe. This is probably going to sound not the way I want it to sound, but I think, like, I believe in the power of prayer. I believe you have to I believe in that. I believe that, you need to sometimes reach out and ask for help in that outside type world. And, meditation and visualization, I believe in those things can bring you comfort and manifest things in your life that you would never thought would be possible without them. I believe in that. But I also believe when you do those things, you have to have action. And I think that's what I've noticed in part of filming with his family is a lot of them turn to religion and try to pray it away without taking the necessary action. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's like how's the scripture go? Was it faith without works is dead? I believe the scripture goes, prayer without works is dead. You not only have to work at it, you only have to pray about it, but you got to work at it too. And and those things,
and you see that in a lot of families, right? Like we things happen generationally, and we sweep them under the rug so we don't hurt Grandma's feelings or, whatever it is, right? We don't discuss it. We don't talk about it. It happens again. And then, we try to, and this is what we got to stop, Besides the fact that we as men need to teach our boys to be better, but that's a whole other conversation, but we need to talk about these things openly and honestly and let Grandma deal with her emotions.
Absolutely. And these things need to be talked about, and they all can lead into, mental health and improving mental health, having these conversations. Everett, I want to give you the opportunity because Joshua 1-9 is currently in production. How far into production are you? Before I let you, I want to know how far into the production have you gone?
We have done the major all the major points with Josh. We actually have some interesting people. Rob Nelson, who is one of the gurus in all of the world for matrix reimprinting and sexual trauma therapy. He's going to be in the documentary kind of talking about, kind of giving us a little light on practices that Joshua uses. So, and that's another part of the documentary. It's not going to just be like a, hey, this is what's going on. It's also going to be like a, hey, this is what he's doing in his recovery process. This is how you can do it in your recovery process. Not that it's going to be a replacement for therapy, but it's going to give you some options of what's out there to help you get yourself clean or get past these things that are hurting you. Then the next guy we have in there his name is Bob Doyle. He is probably best known for being the featured speaker in the documentary The Secret, talking about laws of attraction, and just what we were talking about earlier with how prayer and visualization can lead to all these great things, but there has to be an action plan, and he's going to talk about that. So we're I think about a quarter of a way in. We have a lot of funding to get done. Obviously, we've got to travel to meet those guys, and we're working 100% crowdfund on this as of right now. That's our goal, to be 100% crowdfunded, because we want to. This is a story we want to tell the way we want to tell it. We don't want corporate sponsors telling us, we've got to do things and spin things a different way. We just don't want that, and that's what happens. Let's be honest. That's what happens. You know that, and I know that. Absolutely. Well,
let's roll that. Let's get the ball rolling on getting these donations to you. How can people donate to the production?
The best way is to friend our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/RootSkyProductions.
Okay, and you can also go where?
RootSkyProductions.com.
RootSkyProductions.com. So definitely check out Root Sky Productions on Facebook and go to RootSkyProductions.com. Definitely, I cannot wait to see this production, the finished project, because you keep sending me the trailers, and I'm like, all right, I want to see what's going on. I got to see what happens, because I'm also a little bit nosy, so I like to see what's going to happen and what's going on. Do you have any plans for any other films in the future?
Man, one, I can tell you right now, we're gonna be talking to some. We're gonna be doing a round table. There's only so much I can tell you, but we're in the pre-production process now of doing a round table for athletes who have done some really cool social justice type things.
Ooh, okay.
So
okay,
that's one thing we're working on. We're also working on a reality docu-series based out of Minneapolis. That's basically going to kind of follow See, I didn't know this, but Minneapolis is like the one of like the center focuses of progressive ideologies. I'm not talking about political progressive, but social progressive ideologies. And there's a company there that's actually a bar called Lush, and Lush is one of the first in the entire world, I guess. And I'm learning a lot of stuff as I go along, but traditionally, gay bars were like closed windows, and you know, they were all like you couldn't see in. This was one of the first in the entire nation to have big, huge open windows, and so you could, you know, walk by and you could see out, see in, and so it's a really, but it's evolved into so much more. That's a safe space for all kinds of people and for debates about even things like cultural appropriation, you know, and these are things that, look, I'm learning about. Not going to say I understand everything. This is part of my own learning process, but non-gender or non-binary gender issues, things of that nature, things like I don't even know how to say it kind of thing. So the basis of it is like we've forgotten to get to know our neighbors. You know, we don't know anything about people that live next door to us anymore. And I don't think that's a good thing.
I think you're right. I would have to agree with you about that. I don't think I can remember when I was a little kid. I used to talk to the neighbors all the time. You know, I just thought they were part of my family, and you know, my mom used to joke about all the time how I used to would just go talk to the neighbors and talk them to death. They probably knew everything was going on in my house. I just, you know, little kid just talking. You know what, Everett? I'm so glad we had a chance to discuss your goings on and your happenings and Joshua 1-9, and you know, all the best to you and him in this journey. And you know, you got any last words before we end this?
Nothing I can think of off the top of my head, but thank you so much for having me on and for taking the time. And I think, you know, let's just all get out there and do our own little bits of good, man.
Absolutely, absolutely, and thank you for bringing this project to my attention. I'm always New Twist Radio is about putting a positive light on things, just like Root Sky Productions, and New Twist Radio promotes people that are doing positive things. And I'm very happy that we had a chance to have this discussion, and I look forward to discussing with you in the future your future happenings and your other productions that you're going to be making, and I'm excited about it, and I wish you all the best.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin.
All right. And that is Everett Salyer of Root Sky Productions, co-creator, talking about his new film, his documentary, Joshua 1-9. Definitely check that out.